What's up, and welcome back to a long overdue edition of Seller Spotlight. On this episode, we have a woman after my own heart by way of typography. We're going to talk to Emily. She went from apparel over to a unique product that can be gifted year-round and has gone from, struggling with apparel to 20,000 plus individual sales, almost all text-based design. Let's get to it. So welcome, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? So,
Yeah.
we met, I think, virtually the first time on Eden Fried's, I think, virtual summit there.
Yeah. I think we were on the POD Summit panel together, which was fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. It's always fun to be able to kind of surround yourself with people who understand the game ultimately of print on demand, and not that it's a game, but like just the whole lifestyle, because it really has become a lifestyle, at least for me. And then be able to kind of help people on the fly, like it's not scripted, it's not rehearsed, it's, we're answering your questions. That to me is kind of like my favorite part about the whole thing.
Yeah, same. And I think it's always fun when we have different experiences or areas of expertise, or we've approached it differently. And I think it's so fun to show people how you can be successful in so many different ways. And there's a lot of like key principles that are similar, but the way we go about it, the products we sell, the trends we use, that kind of thing can look different, and you can still have major success.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like, yeah, the testament to my channel being Jay's way. Like, it's not the only way. There's a
Yeah.
million and one ways to kind of, to find your version of success. And that's a great point. So, like, let's get into who was Emily and what brought you to POD. But I want to hear almost impromptu question here, throwing you a curveball. But like, what is your definition, or what was your definition of success before getting into POD, and then has that changed?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question, because I feel like it obviously evolves over time. I think initially my goal and my vision for success with print on demand was to be able to subsidize my salary. So I was hoping, I'm a mom, I have two young kiddos, and at the time they were really young. And my goal was to be able to go part-time in my job and be able to have print on demand kind of subsidize the rest of my salary so that I could be there after school, go on field trips, like have more flexibility. So initially that was really, I put it on a vision board that year. It was like, go part-time. That was all I truly wanted, was to be able to bring in, maybe a couple $1,000s a month. And to me at the time that felt really out there. Yes, I was like, there's no way I can make consistent sales, but I really kept pushing. So really that was kind of my goal. Now that's obviously evolved and changed, but I feel like success looks different to each person. What's really fun is I'll talk to new sellers and their goal is to just pay for groceries, each month. And they're like, I just want $500 a month. And then I have other people that are like, I want to make 10K a month. So I think everyone's vision of that just looks very different, which is also, again, lines up with everyone's shop is going to look different. Their success is going to look different. How they approach it is going to be different. So yeah, that was really my like ultimate vision when I first started.
Nice. And what was the job or vocation you were in at the time?
Yeah. So I came from education. I've worked in education for 15 years or so when I started this. I had originally worked on college campuses for a long time. And then at the time I was working for an education publishing company. So I was kind of learning more about the business side of things, but I had no business experience. I had never designed anything. I had solely been kind of working with students on college campuses for the most part up until that point.
That's awesome. So at least you have an experience with some sort of education, from that perspective, right? It kind of it's funny because I talk to a lot of people. Like my father was a teacher, and a coach, and then I talk to a lot of people who are kind of in our space now, and there always seems to be this. I don't want to say like maybe like some kind of like professional experience, but there is like some element of having been exposed to the educational system in some way. So it almost feels like, there's a hint of that in every single one of us. So when did you get started in POD? And we got to talk about your sales, because you kind of just set a new record this year. We're not even halfway through the year yet.
Yeah, so I hit 100K in sales in my Etsy shop, my print on demand Etsy shop this year, faster than I have in any of the previous years. So that was an exciting just win for this year, especially because we hear so much talk about how Etsy is oversaturated or there's not opportunity anymore to make sales on Etsy. And I feel like this year has proven there's absolutely still so much opportunity out there, which is amazing. But I started selling on Etsy January. This is the most cliche story ever. New Year's Day, January 2023. I had been kind of dabbling in some side hustles. I had tried reselling on Amazon. I had kind of dabbled in KDP, Amazon KDP, and looked at some other things. And in December of 2022, I stumbled across a print on demand video about selling on Etsy. And it kind of hit on a lot of the things that I was looking for. So, as I said, I had 2 young kids. So, I was looking for something I could do from my laptop. I was looking for something where I didn't have to have any inventory or pay a ton of money up front. I didn't want to resell anything. I didn't want to resell products, and I didn't want to resell anyone else's course. I didn't want to do any of that. I also had zero desire to be on social media at the time. I didn't want to market myself. I didn't want to create trendy videos. So, I felt like I had a lot of stipulations for kind of finding a side hustle and a business. So when I found print on demand, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this really checks every single box that I'm looking for. And I could do it, like I said, from my laptop. I'm a huge reality TV fan. And I was like, I could sit on the couch and watch Real Housewives and work on my Etsy shop. And it was perfect, right? So all of those kind of little things came together. And I remember New Year's Day of 2023, I wrote it down. I was like, okay, we are just going to go all in on print on demand. I'm going to give myself 6 months. I told my husband, I'm going to give myself 6 months to see if this thing actually works. And until those 6 months, I'm going to do 110% and really go for it. And yeah, it really just started to work. I started with apparel like many people do. So I started with t-shirts, sweatshirts, because that's kind of what I had learned about. And then a few months in, kind of realized my design skills weren't best suited for that. And I found an avenue for myself where I feel like I've always been able to decently write or connect with words. So I found an avenue selling more giftable print on demand products with super simple designs like candles and journals, where I could connect with the customers through words as opposed to a trendy design. And that's really when my sales took off, was once I kind of made that switch and figured out where the best fit for me was. And then from there, yeah, the rest is kind of history, and here we are.
I love that you're saying you're able to connect emotionally with words, because I look at a meme that I'll have to show on screen at this point in the interview here, but it's like, I will always be waiting for you. And it's written 2 different ways, right? And I'm a big typographic typo head for sure. I love just text in general, because you can do everything in text and make it its own inherent design. But I look at fonts as emotions, right? So it's kind of the way you're enunciating the words and how they come across, right? So you can say, I will always be waiting for you in red pen with a heart on the eye, or it could be scratched in blood, right?
Yep.
And if you get that note on the counter before you're going to work or whatever it is, then you're expecting a completely different outcome at the end of the day.
Terrifying.
If you had one, the scratched on the, stuck somewhere with a knife holding it up, right? Same exact phrasing, same exact punctuation, completely different font choice. And that alone is, can resonate emotionally. So what is it about how you, I guess, bring out the emotion in your text? Is it the actual the paragraph or sentence or word or phrasing itself, or are you doing that through font choices? Because with candles, I feel and this is from my limited Kindle experience, it feels like a lot of the staple is either the typewriter font style or just a blocky sans serif, like a Helvetica bold type thing.
Yeah, no, definitely simple with the fonts is what I found works really well for candles, even something like a journal. Simple, kind of minimalist, but easy to read. Like you're saying, it's something that's very clean and easy to read. And I think where I found an avenue was connecting with the words themselves, especially when it comes to, on candles, humor, right? So finding a way to create a gift or a product that someone can't go buy down the street at a chain store, right? So someone's graduating from nursing school, they're looking for a gift for their daughter or their friend or whoever it might be. You go to the store, it's going to be class of 2026 or whatever it might be, something pretty generic. But if you create a candle simple font that has a really funny kind of inside joke with nurses, or even something that you survived nursing school, or, something that kind of really speaks directly to that specific person, then I have found that that works really, really well on Etsy. And I think one of the keys is clean designs, but getting really, really narrow and specific with who you're talking to in your product. And, I found a few different ways to do this because I'm not a nurse, but there's a few different ways you can kind of go about it. And, looking up memes and different jokes from people in that community or in that career or who have that hobby. Obviously ChatGPT and other tools can help you, but at the time I wasn't using ChatGPT, but you can really find a lot of that language and pull words from those different memes and jokes and things that you find on the internet and be able to really talk more specifically to that customer. So I think keeping it simple, keeping it straightforward, but connecting in an emotional way, which for me and a lot of times is humor, but also just really trying to find that inside language with
Yeah.
your specific customer.
That makes perfect sense. And that's like the
Yeah.
proverbial ideal customer, right? That's who
Yeah.
you want to target. I've kind of used like a bit of an analogy ongoing, but you say you're in the health niche, but I mean, if you're or like a workout niche, right? But then you want to be a little more specific. So let's say now we're talking to yogis or anyone interested in yoga, but three different ideal customers could be the 21-year-old, young woman on doing downward dog at sunrise on a peak of a mountain for Instagram versus the 45-year-old guy who wants to just stay limber enough to travel a little more, maybe do some more hiking and just want to be like more fit versus somebody like my mom who may have had a knee replacement surgery a few years ago who needs to, stay active in a different way. Very different ideal customers. And you're obviously not going to be making the same kind of designs that will resonate over here with the one over here. So I really like that you kind of framed it that way. But like looking at getting into, I think Facebook groups are the best
Yeah.
ever for that kind of
Mhm.
inspiration, right? Because you
Yes.
like join the groups and if that's where they're hanging out, pay attention to not only what they post, but the stuff that gets the likes, the comments, the engagement. It's been a gold mine for a lot of people. And I think it's never ending, right? Like I feel like even as millennials are aging and Gen Z or whatever, it feels like they're more and more active on Facebook also.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think too, starting with something you are familiar with. So, I started with speech language pathologist products, and I am not an SLP, but my sister-in-law is. So I would text her and talk to her. And then I also focused on other niches that I had some familiarity with. Like I was an athlete growing up, and so I kind of could speak the language athletes. My dad was a coach too, and my mom was a coach. My brother played basketball. So, I had a lot of that familiarity and it was an easy place to start. So I would say like for anyone who's just starting, don't feel like you have to like venture out to something you've never even experienced. You can start with things that you and your close circle have that familiarity with, and then, obviously over time expand from there too.
I love that. And I think it's because a lot of the problem, I think, is because we as sellers in general, and not,
Mhm.
I mean, you and I, because we're a little more experienced that way. But in the beginning, everybody's just putting too much stock on, I think, SEO and the
Yes.
search volume of keywords. Like
Yes.
I've always said, stop looking at the word competition as a bad thing. Ultimately, it's only competition if it's selling. So it should just be called like amount of listings or like listings, right?
Right.
But B, it's like just because there's that many out there, I don't even look at that category. I look at the demand. And if there's a demand and or competition can validate that there's demand too, right? So to me, that's a big green flag when everyone shies away from it. And it doesn't mean look for the stuff with the least amount of competition because maybe there's just no demand. You're going to be kind of like struggling with this uphill battle with no buyer intent there at all. What?
And
Yeah,
and I
go
was
ahead.
going to chime in too. What I see on the other side of the flip side of that too is I see a lot of new sellers steer away from keywords or ideas where there's not enough potential search volume according to whichever tool. But if you look on Etsy itself and you search that, you'll see that people are passionate buyers. So there might not be a million of them, but even if there's only a few hundred people searching for that every month, and there's only a handful of listings, like you have the opportunity to really be a standout in that spot. So I think it's kind of viewing it from both ways. And I agree with you. I tend to kind of say like, let's not put so much stock into, there's no perfect SEO, there's no perfect keywords. It's just finding out where are Etsy buyers, what are they looking for every month? What are they typing in the search bar? And like, how can you provide a product for them that fits what they're looking for? So I definitely think that can be a hindrance on both sides, like steering away from competition, but also steering away from things you feel like, oh, well, there's not enough demand for that. But if you look closer, there's a really passionate group of people buying for that. And so you also could miss opportunity there too.
Absolutely. And I mean, it just comes full circle with something I think we both believe strongly in is just resonating emotionally, right?
Yeah.
That's the hook at the end of the day. It doesn't have to hit with 1,000 people every single month, but if it hits with 5 and they like it enough to come back, they're going to tell their friends and you will grow. They will become your brand ambassadors and they're going to be so excited for your next drop in a week or two.
Yep.
Love it. So, I mean, you basically had zero background.
Yes.
Apparel was a flop, we'll call it, right? For lack of, I don't
Yeah.
sugarcoat anything on this
Yeah. No,
channel.
no,
So it's
no.
like, you flop, and that's okay. This is the whole thing. Is like,
Yep.
do I think personally t-shirts are probably the easiest to sell? Sure, because everybody has a t-shirt. Not everybody has a candle. You could argue, right?
Mhm.
But it's a matter of the right design on the right product hitting the right person, and I think a lot of the times people over design all their stuff, or they try too hard in a way that kind of kills the message, you know what I mean, or that emotional hook. And I tell people all the time, yes, I'm a graphic designer, trained, but the biggest slap in the face for me was like thinking, yeah, I'm gonna like back in 2012, 2013, I'm gonna sell all kinds of cool stuff and everyone's gonna love it, and not it was just crickets, like fall flat on my face, big time. All this time I'm putting in, like my stuff sucks. Like, what is it? I know aesthetically it's good, and I know by all design standards it's solid. But at the end of the day, if it's not what the customer wants, it's not what the customer wants.
Yeah.
And it's being able to kind of put your ego aside. That was the biggest one. And then, because I had always come from a place where I was designing with a creative brief ultimately, right?
Mhm.
Like I'd give the customer freelance a list of questions, they tell me what they want, and I create for them. All of a sudden, I'm in this kind of realm with t-shirts where I'm thinking like, yeah, I get to do whatever I want. No, it's not like that at
Yeah.
all. You still have to do
Exactly.
what the customer wants. You're just kind of litmus testing with new products to see, because you're not taking a customer brief from anybody. Yeah, I don't know. I like that you're being able to do this. I see people like struggle all the time, especially with predominantly text, right? Like you're not putting a lot of the graphics or different funny things. Do you use graphics or imagery at all in your designs on the candles?
I do on candles. If I do, I like to, what I explain is it's kind of like an exclamation point on the design. Like it's just
Yeah.
an accent to the word. So, when you're designing a candle, you want that main text to really be what stands out because that's what people are reading. If you search on Etsy, funny candle, something generic like that, you'll see all the bestsellers are just primarily text. So I do have some candles that sell really well that have like a very small kind of graphic to it. Like I said, just an accent to whatever the words are. But I would say the words are kind of the star of that design. Now, for some of the other products, I sell journals. I've gotten into like can coolers and some different products like that. I have incorporated some more graphics into that. But again, now I'm like 3+ years into this and I've learned a lot. But when I do candles still, they're very simple. Even journals still very, very simple. Mugs too. Like if I'm designing mugs for the most part, they're pretty straightforward. So yeah, I think like you said, it depends a lot on the product and it's learning where is your strength at? Where's your skill set at? And that's going to develop over time, of course, and also learning what sells best. I see a lot of students who have come from selling apparel and then they are like, well, I want to try a candle or I want to try a journal. And they want to put a t-shirt design on a candle or a journal. And, that's my feedback to them is you have to design for what the customers want on this particular product. And for this particular product, that's not what they're looking for. So we do a lot of researching, again, just looking at the best-selling candles, like what do they have in common? A lot of them just have one color text on it with a very, very simple font. And it can be hard to retrain your brain, I think, if you're coming from more of that graphic design background, or you've been doing apparel or doing things that are more like trendy and have more graphics involved, to really pare that down, like really, really, really pare that down. Yeah.
I was to say, or if you're too reliant on AI generating everything.
Yes. Yeah, I see that too. Yes, 100%. So I definitely have worked with some newer sellers who use AI for a lot, which is great. I mean, they're incredible tools, but I think sometimes they don't believe me when I'm like, no, I really mean like black text on a white label. Like that's all. And we try to really work on the wording and what words they're using and really making it streamlined, not putting too many words. Like you want to keep it simple and straightforward. And honestly, again, that's really what's working out there.
I could not agree more. And I feel like in a time where, getting very AI heavy and automation heavy, I
Yes.
mean, people are yearning. I've been saying this for like, I feel like a year and a half now, but
Yes.
people want that human connection back. And the fastest way to do it is visually and through words. So if you're not going to be doing something, that is ornate design kind of thing, then the words always hit. They always hit. And I see it a lot too. It's like, you don't need to have for a t-shirt design, for example, like 3 or 4 lines of text is too much. It needs to hit in an instant at a glance through a feed on a 4-inch screen, right? Like
Mhm.
if you can embody that, it just visualize that as the sellers or people watching. So you don't want to have something that if you can get that same emotional hook out in like 4 to 5 words as opposed to, a paragraph, then
Yep.
that's the win, right?
Yeah.
I love that you're
100%.
on the same train that way. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you mentioned can koozies there, and it got me on a tangent just thinking in my head because we opened up actual brick and mortar. So I went like total left field here. We sell pirate theme fun merch, island vibe stuff,
Oh,
t-shirts,
fun.
and other things. Now we just added the can koozies because people love them here. It keeps
Yes.
helps with the heat. So yeah, totally. It's like I don't know, just felt I've always wanted to have a t-shirt kind of shack on a beach, and now we have one, right? So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But that said, we're getting group buys and stuff like that. Have you and people that come off like cruises and they want to like commemorate their pit stops along the way? Like you had mentioned before we hit record, you had come down to Belize briefly through a cruise, right?
Yep.
With a group or whatever. So like, have you done anything with groups or parties or kind of like vacation vibe stuff?
Yes. So, we talked about at the beginning how this has been the fastest year to six figures so far. And I attribute a lot of that to the party niche. And that has been where a big, and I wouldn't even say only the party niche, but like special events, which I would include even like, bachelorette party trips, birthday trips, vacations included in that. And a big reason for that is increasing that average order value, which you can do with these bulk orders, and can coolers is one. If you look at a can cooler on its surface, like if you're on Printify and you're looking at the pricing and stuff, you might think, well, you're only going to make a few dollars, if you sell one. But I think the key with a product like can coolers is you'll sell them in groups of 10, 15, 20. And so really the profit there is designing for these opportunities where you are selling them in bulk. So that has been a big focus for me is focusing on those areas for bulk kind of order opportunities. And even in parties or events that may not be, everyone thinks of bachelorette parties. That's like a pretty common one. But, retirement parties, graduation parties, kids' birthday parties, baby showers, all the things, that has been a huge, and what I have found is regardless of what's kind of happening, in the world and economically, parties and these special events, people are spending and buying for them no matter what. So, they're budgeting for that. They are willing to spend for that extra, nice guest book or tapestry or can coolers or matching tote bags or whatever it might be. And so I have found that that's been an area that has been really consistent for me. And that's what I spent a lot. I would say the second half of last year, I primarily focused in this area, and then this year I've been seeing it pay off tremendously. So that's another thing too is, this isn't something, even if you've been doing this for a little while, if you're shifting it all or focusing on an area, that success isn't going to necessarily happen like overnight. I spent 6 months kind of pouring into, really some new products, new designs, trying things, testing things, doubling down on what was working. And then really come 2026, I was truly seeing that kind of pay off and take off. And so, it takes some time to figure it out, to learn. And yeah, it's been paying off, but can coolers are definitely one of those products that I'm really loving right now in a
Awesome.
lot of different ways. Yeah.
That's fun. That's funny, but also fun.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you think like a low ticket item, right? Ultimately, and then it's also at a price point with print on demand that is could be prohibitive if you're looking at the single item orders, of course,
Right.
because who's going to pay $20 or whatever with your profit added on? But you're absolutely right. It's the same with like the like you mentioned the bridal shower stuff. These are like the things that are the biggest emotional hooks for humans are like the peak and end events. And these, if we look at them
Yes.
like altruistically, is supposed to be a once in a lifetime type thing. So if you're going on this big family cruise or trip, it's like once or twice in a lifetime. The bachelorette thing once, like so, like any kind of inhibitions you might have about budget, they go out the window, and we see this, right? Like they're buying like the bridesmaids gifts, the even on the bachelor side of things, a lot of the time it's a woman who's doing like some of the sourcing for that
Yep.
stuff. And yeah, it just all the any financial governance just goes right out the window. And I mean, who are we to not want to capitalize on that in a very easy way, right? And canned
Yep.
koozies, it's just an extra add-on, like the point of sale purchase. It's like that pack of gum that's looking at you in the face, or that
Yep.
that sweet little something at the end, because they're not out of budget for people who have just spent $1,000 over here, right? It's just a little add-on. And yeah, if they're adding 10 or 15 or 20, then it's a massive win. I
For
love it.
sure. Yep.
Um, so are we talking, seasonal spikes then for a lot of this stuff, or are you doing like sales pretty much year round? I mean, it's first 5, 6 months into the year, 5 months into the year now. So I'd argue that it's not just seasonal. Probably the bachelorette seasonal, but the can koozie stuff, how's that playing out?
Yeah, it's been consistent. Like January is normally one of my slowest months, which I think for most people that tends to be the case. And this January was like my biggest January by far. I think I doubled what I did like last year.
Amazing.
So I think it's just and I wasn't sure what to expect, but I think after the holidays, people are like, okay, time to plan the next thing. And January was huge for these parties and events, especially when it came to like baby showers, kids' birthday parties. So I'm always trying to think of it's kind of a mix of, these events are happening all year round. So that itself is evergreen. But then I think mixing in seasonal themes has been really successful as well. So for example, in the winter, you have bachelorette party themes that are like snow and love and, things like that. So mixing in some of those seasonal themes, but really focusing on those events and parties being, truly evergreen because they're happening all year round.
Yeah, that's one of the things I pivoted very early into was birthdays, because like
Yeah.
I'm like, we're never not going to have birthdays, and then no one's never not going to buy a T-shirt, right, to
Right.
commemorate something. So that's kind of where my headspace went. So that makes perfect sense. Like, I mean, I think that's the goal is like, and then it crushes me when I see a lot of sellers like go all in on Christmas only, and it's like, what are you going to do come Jan, Feb, March when everything
I
flatlines?
know.
Even if you were lucky enough to get that Christmas spike on just Christmas stuff. I've always kind of said, like, I want your sentiment on this too. Do you put like seasonal shifts on stuff but stay within the original niche or niches that you're targeting, or do you go all in on things like that? Because I try to lean where I tell people, like, don't go just all in on Christmas unless it makes sense to cross niche or something that you can apply to your existing customer base.
Yeah, I primarily stick, especially when it comes to if we're talking about, candles, journals, mugs, things like that. What surprised me my first Q4 was that it was all of my non-Christmas things that were selling like crazy. And it makes a lot of sense, right? So when you're buying someone a gift, like if I'm buying my mom a gift or my husband a gift, I for the most part, do not buy them something that's red and green and has
Christmas
Santa Claus on it.
flavored, right?
No, I buy them something that like again, if it's a candle, like it's something funny that made me think of her and I'm going to put it like in her stocking or give it to her or whatever it might be. So I found that really sticking with Evergreen, but looking at things again, those identities, the ways that people connect, hobbies, things like that. Now, I like to sprinkle in some seasonal products, but that's now. That first year, if I could go back and tell myself anything, it would be like, don't waste time on that. Now, what I will say that I do for anyone who is thinking about this year is I do a large ornament push, closer to the fall where I will design, a lot of ornaments and put those out because ornaments do incredibly well every year. You can also do really simple designs on those. And there's a lot of different lanes and opportunities there. I sold a nurse ornament yesterday and I was like, this is so interesting, but people buy them for graduation and other things like that. So they still kind of have some of that evergreen opportunity there. But ornaments would be kind of the product that I do a really, big push for closer to the fall. But outside of that, it's still not even super Christmassy, There's still, like I said, products that do and will sell year round. So I really try to stick with kind of that evergreen foundation, focus on, what would people buy for one another naturally during that time of the year. And then, sprinkle in a flavoring of seasonal, holidayness if it feels relevant and if it makes sense. But that is definitely not kind of the foundation of my strategy, I would say.
Makes perfect sense. And I think, you just kind of mentioned candles again being in a stocking stuffer, for example.
Yeah.
See how much you're willing to share here. But
Yeah.
can you give me a specific example of something or ornament or candle? I'm thinking of something that you would have put a seasonal spin on, but then also one that maybe has blown up or sold like crazy, and what you think would have been the reason for them each, if there are both.
Yeah, so one that definitely blew up, well, I will say it's a niche, my first holiday season, and it still continues to be, a best-selling niche for me, is coworker gifts. So a lot of jobs will do white elephant exchanges, Secret Santa gifts, things like that. And they usually have, a price point, and candles are typically a gift or a product that kind of fall. It's an accessible product for people. It's not so expensive. It's fairly reasonably priced. And I had a coworker gift that was just like a humorous, funny kind of inside language thing about you have to check trademarks on all of these things, but it was something related to like a spreadsheet and like spreadsheet humor. And you see some of that on Etsy, on mugs and stuff like that. But make sure you check your trademarks, because some of those things are trademarked. But
Excel is trademarked.
yes. So that one really blew up my first year, and that one was not seasonal at all. It was just a straightforward kind of funny candle, something that, again, I was still working full time at the time, and at work I was kind of like the spreadsheet queen. And so it was just something that came from my own work experience. And so that's why I always tell people, kind of use the things in your own life to inspire that. And then I would say, for something more seasonal, this past year, I would say I was surprised by how many like first Christmas as, that's a pretty generic thing, but even more specifically, like I mentioned, the nurse one, first Christmas as like a doctor, a lawyer, all of these things were selling kind of outside of graduation season. They were selling in November and December. And also second Christmas or third Christmas, like for little kids, like
Wow.
I have
Okay.
kids. I didn't know that those were things that people bought, but apparently they
Right.
do, and they were selling like crazy. So, those more seasonal things, like, and what's nice is I'm a big fan of using design templates, so you're not reinventing the wheel every time. So if you have something that has like a teddy bear on it with like a 3 and you customize with their name, you can just simply change out the teddy bear or change out the number, and, you're not trying to redesign everything the whole time. But those did really well this past year, and it was, again, not super surprising, but still surprising, like how many ornaments, and especially that whole idea of the first Christmas as. I was talking to a student the other day, and they did incredibly well in December. I think they sold over 50K in just ornaments. And they had used like pretty much the same design template, first Christmas as, whatever it might be, fill in the blank. And they told me the other day, like they're still selling multiple ornaments every single day. So, they peak in November and December with that seasonality, but they do sell year round.
Yeah, especially if it's a monumentous thing, right? Like, first baby's first Christmas. Well, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa now are going to buy that at that moment that they become the grandparent, because they're so proud, and, the fierity there. But they're going to buy that for their son or daughter who just became a parent immediately. And that's going to live on their mantle somewhere until Christmas, when the tree's up. And, so like you can absolutely keep the lights on year round with that kind of stuff. You mentioned something about like, a testament to having life experience. And I've said this before too, but like people, we have a lifetime of work experience, and it pains me when I see people struggling to find a niche. I'm like, you should just be choosing one that and not letting something happen in the universe where you find one, but choose one, do a little bit of research. But I would argue, like I've kind of position it this way: is like, what is something you know more about than other people in the room typically? And that's a great place to start. But also, you mentioned something about the work experience, and we all have a lifetime of experience. What did you study? What was the pain points? You don't have to have done it as a profession. Maybe you took nursing, didn't become a nurse, but you remember all the pain points. Maybe you can make study guides. Maybe you can do different things for people, like spreadsheets, spreadsheet queen here.
Yeah.
Maybe you can make things to help them with different macros in it that can make it easy for them to, add up some stuff from a business accounting perspective or something. There's so many ways that we can do this, but I need your specifics here on how you would get. I know you mentioned like the Facebook groups or the memes type thing, but how would somebody who maybe has like you said, your sister's a nurse, or was it your sister?
Speech therapist, my sister-in-law. Yeah.
Speech therapist.
Yeah.
My sister's also a nurse, so like we're predisposed to a little bit of lingo when they would come into the room and complain about their daily life or whatever it is, right? The nuances there. But like, how would you, as somebody who may not have anybody in that realm in their immediate circle, get into the head of someone buying something for a nurse or a teacher gift or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think just, right away, the first thing you can do is honestly for free, just search on Etsy, because you first want to get a sense of what flavor does that customer like, right? So we're talking about nurse candles that sell really well. 99% of them have a funny joke on them. But if you look at maybe, let's say, pet candles or obviously, like if you're looking at something like a pet memorial candle, like that's going to have a very just sentimental, clean look to it, very light, bright. It's not going to have most of the time any kind of humor to it. And so you have to first just kind of understand what's the general vibe that you're looking for. So if you're like, okay, well, I like this idea of going into kind of like healthcare. I'm going to do some candles. Let me start with nurses, then I think that's when you can go look at Facebook groups. I even do just on Google, I'll type in, pediatrics nurse meme and go to Google Images, and there will often be a lot of just like memes and funny things on there. And what I'm looking for is just kind of pulling out any phrases or commonalities that pop up over and over again. And I think anytime with print on demand, with anything, a lot of this is just pattern recognition. You're just trying to identify like what are the patterns that are sticking out to you. And I think a lot of times we overcomplicate it. And just in reality, we're just trying to figure out what do we see popping up over and over again. And then I think you can also go to, ChatGPT or whichever AI tool you're using. And sometimes I'll pop in some of the memes that I find and say, like, I'm having a hard time. If I'm having a hard time kind of putting something together, I might say, I'm brainstorming for a funny candle for a pediatrics nurse. Here are some memes from, Google that I pulled. Like, can you help me come up with some phrases? And that really will sometimes help just kind of bring the vision together. But, I think it's just getting first that sense of what vibe, tone, approach, because you want to make sure you're meeting them where they're at. And then it's coming up with something original, obviously, to present to buyers from there.
That makes sense when you talk about the pet memorial, right? I've seen some pet memorial stuff that look like they could be like a family vacation 2026 thing, and it's all happy and so ornate. Meanwhile, the whole point is to be sentimental and subtle and not in your face loud. That's a really good point. So that said, then, if we're going, let's say, not just memorial, but if we're trying to do something a little more reserved, I'll call it, and not so loud, what, it doesn't have to be memorials here, but like what in that sense with text that maybe isn't a full paragraph or too wordy, what would get something like that on a label of a candle, for example, to stop the scroll in a feed? What would be the differentiating factor there?
Well, first, I think it's being different from everything else that's out there. So, and it doesn't have to be wildly different, but even, so many candles out there say smells like fill in the blank. And that's fine. And you can definitely do that. I certainly have candles that start with that. But I think trying to find a way to stand out. And like I said, ChatGPT has helped me with that before. Even like my husband, I'll be like, what's a different way to say this? Sometimes you just need like an outsider perspective.
100%.
But, something like the calming scent of, or some people do funny ones where it's like the not so calming scent of, or smells better than, and it's kind of like a, a play on the words there. So I think first is coming up with something a little bit unique. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It doesn't have to be a paragraph because no one's going to see that or read it. Just something a little bit different. And I think it's providing a clear perspective on that candle. So, let's say we're doing something that's sentimental. Let's say teacher appreciation is really big right now, obviously, and you're trying to do something sentimental for a teacher. It could be, smell the calming scent of the last 3 o'clock bell for the summer or something like that, right? I'm just totally playing off the top of my head here. But, something that's visual, something that makes them feel almost like they're in that moment. And then obviously you can go humorous, you can go more sentimental, but it's just doing something clear, something that really gives them that, like, when they read it, they're like, oh yeah, that's like the best feeling ever, right? The last bell before the summer break starts. The calming scent of 3 o'clock on summer break or whatever it might be, or that it's, at 3 months off or whatever. Again, I'm just totally brainstorming here, but I think it's just having that really visual language where, again, it's that person, that teacher in particular is going to be like, oh yes, that's like the best feeling ever. And it's on a candle. It's something different. It's something unique. Again, like I was just shopping for teacher appreciation this weekend and everything is just so like generic, like
Yeah.
you're the best teacher. And if you write on a candle, smells like you're the best teacher, I'm sure someone is making sales out there, don't get me wrong. But if you're a new shop, it's going to be really hard to stand out with that. So you need something a little bit more visual that really takes that person kind of into that, like, oh, I feel excited when I read that, or I feel touched when I read that, or it makes me laugh when I read that. You just kind of have to get to that emotional connection point. And again, it doesn't have to be, I feel like I don't want to make it sound like it has to be this big revolutionary, like, you're not winning like a Pulitzer Prize or something with your candle label. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's direct, and there's a lot of tools out there that can kind of help simplify that for you.
For sure. I think AI is a great one that way. If you
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
somebody in your immediate,
Correct.
surroundings that you could just
Yeah.
bounce it off, right? Because even like a male perspective with different life experiences can be completely different than,
Yes.
a female perspective and completely.
Hmm.
That makes perfect sense. So we talked about, kind of dabbling into professions you don't know much about, but like, do you do A/B testing at all? Like, have you tried like a black label versus a white label or like the same design, but maybe a different font?
Yes, so I have definitely done like a black label versus a white label. And generally, I would say a lighter label with a dark font tends to perform best, is what I found. But I have best-selling ones that have a black label with white font. So again, it's kind of a little bit hard to know sometimes, but I have definitely tested that. I have tested mock-ups too, because, posted the same candle twice and seen which mock-up connects better with customers, which is helpful. Is it a hand holding the candle or is it a candle sitting on, just like a really minimalist kind of tabletop? What works best there? So I definitely do some A/B testing there. I have tried different fonts and I have kind of found, depending on tone and who the candle's targeting and kind of what approaches it. Is it a more gender kind of neutral font? Is it a little bit more masculine? Is it a little bit more fun and whimsical and more female oriented? So depending on the customer too, I've kind of been able to figure those out. But honestly, I will still, my best selling candles, most of them have a white label, super black, simple text on them. Um, and that's what I find just continues to work over and over again, which is crazy.
It's funny because it seems so counterintuitive. You think the black label will jump out more and this and that, and everyone's trying to
Yeah.
stand out in the marketplace. And that's what, everyone preaches, right? You have to stand out, you have to stand out. But this just comes full circle. And this is something I totally believe too, is that you can stand out with that emotional hook. And that at the end of the day is going to make or break the sale, right? Like people
Yep.
have to, that is so me, or that is so my sister. I have to get it now. And I feel the same way applying that to t-shirts. So I want people to, A, make something that you're proud enough to wear yourself or give as a gift that would fit like a $40 mark, not a $10 t-shirt type thing. But also, like you mentioned, the Secret Santa and the White Elephant, like usually there's like budgets or like
Yep.
constraints, right? So you want to make sure that it fits above that or whatever. Um, but also, it's just like you want somebody to see that shirt and be like, "Oh, where'd you get that shirt?" Or "That's awesome." Like that's the reaction you're trying to evoke every time, and it doesn't have to be this ornate imagery. You could do it with like 2 words of text on a shirt, and I feel like you have absolutely nailed that in your candles because 22,000 candle sales does not lie, right? There is some proof in the data there.
And I think too, something that I always like to, and this was hard for me at first, is your designs, and I'm sure you've probably said this so many times, is your designs don't have to appeal to everyone. Like sometimes my candles have a sense of humor on them that might some people are going to be like, oh gosh, I could never buy that. You know what I mean? But there is a huge population of people that might have a similar sense of humor as
Yep.
me. And they're like, that's perfect. For example, I really love selling in like the grief and sympathy niche. And I get really the best customers. They're just so kind and thankful. And, more than just the sales, like people are just so incredibly gracious in that space because they're buying a gift for someone going through a really hard time. But I have put a spin on that niche. Like I don't like to cry a lot. Like I tend to, I'd rather maybe curse a little or whatever it might be. And I've met those customers where they're at. They're like, yes, I've been looking for something that just says exactly what I'm feeling or this person is feeling and isn't so, mushy gushy or so sympathy. It's a little bit more straightforward. It's a little bit like, this is terrible. And you don't have to design for everyone. It's kind of finding your people and testing different things, but don't be afraid to have a clear approach to your words or your tone. Like I was really hesitant for a long time to do that, and then once I did, it just clicked. And I have come across so many Etsy buyers now that are like, "Oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for." And sometimes I think you just have to be willing to like take a clear approach to your wording and don't feel like you have to cater to every single buyer.
Absolutely. I'll echo that all day. Like be intentional with who you're targeting and try to hit them specifically. Like you said, like meet them where they're at emotionally in their, current state of mind. And I would argue that it's, more important to do that than to try to appeal to anybody
Yep.
and not just do that, but do that also. But like the faster you can kind of identify that specific ideal customer and go after them. You don't need to appeal to everybody. It's just not it's going to burn you out because you're going to be trying to make too many things and your headspace is going to be everywhere. But as soon as you got them on lock, like I mean, you can introduce dark humor into absolutely any niche, and
Absolutely.
it is a gold mine. I will leave it at
Yes.
that because
Yeah.
this is your show, and I don't want to give away too many gems here. But if there's one thing that you could say to somebody who is thinking like I could never do this, you guys are talking, oh, you're making it sound easy, like just words on a shirt or just words on a candle label. What's one thing that you might be able to say to them that could change their mind? Because I think like everyone overthinks this. To your point, you mentioned a few times,
Mhm.
over designs it, overthinks it, and or they just think there's no way I could just survive on like a bold black font on a white label.
Yeah. Well, first I would say like we said before, I genuinely started this with zero experience, like literally zero, had barely even used Canva before besides creating like a slide deck for work. So this is very much it's why I love print on demand because it's very accessible and doable for a lot of people. And I think what's so important is just taking action every day, but like not feeling like you have to tackle the whole mountain today. It's just like one step at a time. And so, yes, we have been doing this. You've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this the last couple years. And so we're speaking from a place of, this experience built up, but every day we're working with, new sellers that are tackling the first steps to this. And so I always like to encourage everyone that it's like any new skill that you have. If you're going to go try to run a marathon, like you're not going to run 26 miles the first day you go out. You are going to run 2 miles. And then eventually you're going to run 5 miles, and then you build up to 10 miles and go from there. Like you would never run out and try to do that all in one day. So I think it's just taking it literally one baby step at a time. And the other thing I would say that I find and that I found at the time when I first started, and I still find this, is I always encourage people that are trying this for the first time to focus on the things that they can control. So, I can't control that an Etsy buyer sees my product and purchases it with their credit card, but I can control my actions that day and what I'm investing into the process and into the business that will hopefully, reward me afterwards. And it's totally normal that there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of listings that are never going to sell. Like I have a lot of them. But every single piece of the process is you're learning something, you're taking something from it. And the people that I see who stick with it, I have a seller in my community that she's a retired nurse actually. And, it's been slow going for her. And now like she has stuck with it and she is making sales on her products. And it's just so encouraging because she's the people who stick with it and just, again, take those small daily steps towards that progress. And they try to stay positive. They try to focus on the things that they control. They really start to see that pay off. So
Yeah.
I know you said one thing, but that was kind of a lot of things. But
No, but
yeah,
I mean, well said, and absolutely. Because at the same time, also give yourself some grace. If I could
yeah,
piggyback on what you're saying, because
yeah.
like for the first time, you don't have a job description, and you're every department of the business that you once worked for. So you're doing payroll, you're doing marketing, you're doing all of the things. You're the designer and the product sourcing. Like all of that. So like, in what world would you think that you'd go from zero to 100K in 6 months with zero experience in most of these fields, right? So like, yeah, I mean, you're bang on with everything you said, and I love every minute of it. Was there a mistake you made early on though on that end, like that might have cost you time and money, other than maybe the niche down part? And then you kind of mentioned that you had some throughout that some people in your community. So I want you to tell us everything you got about it, and or maybe some kind of sweet deal or anything of that nature.
Sure, sure. It's funny. I always think about the mistake. The only mistake I kick myself because any mistake I made or listings that were a flop or time spent doing things I shouldn't have been, I feel like I at least learned from that, which is great. And not to sound super corny and overly positive, but I do feel like you can take those experiences and then kind of what to do next. So I think I'm grateful for all of that. What I will say is I did have copycats on an early bestseller, and I learned really quickly about the importance of doubling down when something starts working because I had this bestseller out there and I just kind of let it be. I was like, great, that's awesome. Okay, let me move on and do other things when I really should have been trying to double down on that design and that idea and really like pushing it and kind of accelerating there, and I didn't. But again, I learned because now I operate differently, and now I know, okay, if something's working, I really need to do more of that. So I think overall all of that was a great lesson. And yeah, so I work with a lot of new sellers. So I have a community called the Gift Lab community. I've partnered with Gold City Ventures, and they have been in the Etsy world for a while now in the digital product printables space. And a couple years ago, we launched a course called the Gift Lab. And now we have a community hosted on School. And it's such a wonderful group of people in our community. Everyone is super positive and supportive. And really, my goal there is to take away the overwhelm. So we talked about people who are just starting. It's learning from the mistakes I made. So talking about these are the things that I did and here's what I would do different. But it's to help get people started, to get through that starting line. So I provide monthly templates, like design templates to work from. Every week I'm sharing, new trends and giving listing audits, shop audits. So it's a lot of it's a group community, but I'm doing a lot of feedback and support every single day. And one of my favorite things that I do is for the group, and everyone seems to really love it, is called an Evergreen lab report. So in a lot of communities, you might get trend reports, which is great. Trends are really important, and we definitely talk about trends. But every month, I'm sharing multiple product ideas that are helping you build kind of that evergreen foundation in your shop. So it might be a design style, it might be a niche mixed with a product type, and each of those is coming with like keywords to potentially use and design templates to get you started. So it's really to kind of help, give you a little bit of a, an alley-oop, I would say, to like be able to get those first listings up. And then we have sellers that are, have made thousands of sales, sellers that are just beginning their journey, and everyone is so supportive, helping each other. And it's just been such a great experience, and I love being in there every single day with them.
Awesome. So where can we find you, and where can they find the community?
Yeah, so the community is on School. It's called the Gift Lab Community, but you can also find me on Instagram and YouTube at Ecom Emily. So it's ECOMM Emily. So I'm active on Instagram and YouTube every week. So you can find me there. But yeah, on School, the Gift Lab Community, and we can provide the links and everything like that too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Everything will be
Yeah.
linked down below and on the screen here. So yeah, this has been awesome. Such a fun conversation, because I feel like we're on the same page with a lot of, the MO and the whys, but a lot of that does come with figuring it out along the way. So I think one of the best rewarding things for me has been able to just kind of give this information away, and like you said, hopefully shorten that learning curve, right? So
Exactly.
thank you so much for being a giant part of today. It's so many gems. You guys are gonna have to go, watch this back and take some notes for sure. But thank you so much. I'm looking forward to doing this again soon. I hope maybe we can make this a regular thing. It'd be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I would love that. That would be great. This was so fun.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.